So the subject is the last day. My, that instills fear into our hearts, doesn't it? The last day. What kind of a father would want us to be fearful on the last day, returning home to him? I cannot believe that. But that has been instilled into us, that fear. But it is the most wonderful thing when, through God's grace, we can be freed from this delusion of duality in this existence and feel without fetters the love of the one Father. And so we should not worry about the last day. We should live every day as if it were the last day, while in the meantime meditating regularly in this worldly existence, becoming accustomed to friendship with the Father, and then when His grace comes, there will not be any break in the continuity of our consciousness on the last day of this worldly existence. We should live now. Every day is the last day. Not looking in the future for the presence of God, but right now, this moment. And then there'll be no break in the continuity when you pass into the omnipresence of the eternal Father. It is the fact we are looking in the future for something that prevents His coming into us in a conscious way. So let us live every day as the last day, but in the meantime, meditating regularly in this life right now, so that we will be used to His presence when we leave this vehicle behind and merge in His eternal essence, His great peace, His bliss, His love. The last day, in another aspect, means that day when, having worked out all our karmic impulses and paid the price, we are free from returning here to this existence. We are free in the eternal spirit throughout eternity. Of course, that's the great last day. But to me, the last day seems, or rather appeals more to me, when I think it is the day when you have understood delusion and you see the play, you see the dream of God's cosmic dream. You understand it as apart from you, and you are one with Him, and also at times one with the cosmic dream. When you understand that, that's the last day of delusion, and you are free, even though perhaps you have to come back and work out some karma. As I said a few minutes ago, if God is with us, what is a little working out of karma? The important thing is to pass through that last day of delusion so that from now on, come what may, God is with us. His love is with us. Nothing else matters. If we do this, then there'll be no change. When we feel this cosmic dream slipping away from us, there'll be no change because we are used to, we are familiar with, we have friendship with the one eternal Father, because we have not been negligent here on this earth. We have not forgotten our greatest engagement, as our Master used to say, which is with God. There'll be no change, no break in the continuity of consciousness. Our dream consciousness is a great illustration of this last day. When we dream, just as we wake up, especially if it is not suddenly, we perceive the dream passing away. And then we realize we were dreaming. So it is with this cosmic dream of God. When we wake up in Him, when we have waked up in Him on the coming of the last day of this life, we will feel the dream slipping away, passing away. But we'll be conscious of where we're going. We'll be conscious of the one Father. Then we will understand that this existence is the cosmic dream of the Lord. But we are not that. We are not that. We are one with the eternal presence of God, which is the fullness of life. In this existence, we see only a portion of life. From birth and through the various experiences of life to death, that's only a portion of the great river of life. The river of life is God Himself underneath. That is what we must be familiar with while living in this mundane existence. If we can do that, there'll be no break in the continuity of God's love in us and our consciousness as one with Him. That's the great lesson we must learn. We must learn it is our duty to meditate so that we will know God. We will be familiar with Him. We'll have friendship with Him. And then when whatever change comes as the cessation of this bodily consciousness, we will not be left in oblivion. And our Master said, Ramakrishna said, God will not cast you into oblivion. If you really feel for Him and want His love, if you care not for Him, you'll pass into the state of deep sleep, as we do every night. And so meditation means what? It means making the state of deep sleep dynamic to your consciousness. Every night in sleep, unless you can consciously dream and then go into the state of deep sleep, you pass into the presence of God. If you can do it consciously, you will know the presence of the one Father in the state of deep sleep. In meditation, that's what you know. When you meditate, you are in the state of deep sleep consciously. Every night in sleep, you are in that state unconsciously. So meditation is a wonderful thing. It makes the state of deep sleep, which is the state when you and your Father are one every night. It makes that dynamic to your consciousness. In other words, you are aware of it. You are conscious of it. You are not unconscious. And so our path is clear. We must regularly meditate, make the acquaintanceship with God, so to speak. We came alone with Him. We have no other relatives when you come right down to it, because in this earthly existence they all pass away. But in meditation, God is always there. And so we must be sensible and reasonable, know Him, make the acquaintanceship with God. Now, someday, this daily existence, which seems so real, with our loved ones and all the things we have and such things, will be irrevocably withdrawn. You cannot get back to it. We might as well face the facts. It will be withdrawn. It will, as I have said, fade away, and we'll be left either in one or two conditions. We'll be unconscious, or having known God, having made friendship with Him, we will be one with Him. Now, we are human beings, supposedly to be reasonable beings. Let us understand that. It's up to us. God has given us free will on that last day to be able to be with Him without losing the feeling of His love within our hearts. Oh, we can neglect Him. We can forget the giver and be taken up with His gifts, and we will pass into oblivion as unconscious. But from the testimony of the great sages, the Scriptures, Jesus said, that peace which passeth all understanding. God is love. Master said, God is crying for us more than we can imagine. It seems, as reasonable people, we would want that, rather than unconsciousness, and then come back to this world existence and pass through all its trials. Jesus said, be of good cheer. In the world you shall have tribulations, but I have overcome the world. It simply means You make friendship with God. You know the Christ consciousness which he enjoyed and which he said is in each and every one of us. You know it, and you are in it permanently if you make that friendship with God. Be of good cheer. I am overcome the world. We can do it. Why? Because we're all made in the same image of God. And so let us make that last day right now, no matter what our realization is or isn't. If we have that will to know God, we will not lose our consciousness on the coming of the so-called last day. Because we are one with the infinite Father, our consciousness is none other than his. The love which we feel is none other than his. The only thing is we can prevent a break in the continuity of that love. Because he is our Father. His mercy endureth forever. And we can demand that of him because we are his children. And so, think of what a mystery life is. Think of it as we see it. People come from some unknown place. They come as a little child, and you know the rest of the story, and they evaporate, so to speak, into that unknown. The mystery of the unknown. Birth comes out of it, and through death we enter the unknown, just like the wave in the ocean. That's the greatest illustration. Up comes the wave as this life, and it sinks and melts into the ocean. What must we do? Must we be attached to that wave and be pushed into oblivion, so to speak? No, we must know the unknown. The unknown is not unknown to the soul. The unknown is not unknown to the presence of God within us. We are taken up with the wave. We have to rise above that. We have to know the unknown. But the greatest thing is, it is not an undesirable thing to accomplish. It is the greatest thing. Because in the unknown is God's infinite love. But how strange it is, how great a delusion. From this unknown thing comes all the people in the world, the little babies, and all the fuss made over them and the whole thing, and they grow up and get into more trouble, and then all trouble comes when you get married and so forth, in some cases, but not always. Then we begin to wake up and sober up, so to speak, and before we can accomplish it, we pass into the unknown. Most people, millions of people. So we must know the unknown. But the greatest thing is God's love is the unknown. His consciousness. And our own consciousness is a part of that unknown. But what a delusion that makes us feel separated from God. That's the delusion. Ego consciousness. Meditation will break that delusion. Meditation will enable you to know you are not the body. That's the thing. What are you? One with your Father. There is no separation then between you. You are never apart. Never apart. Even in your sleep, you will feel his presence. You'll feel that deep sleep, that joy of deep sleep, first semi-consciously, then all the time. It's a wonderful thing. God is a great Father. He's the one we must know if we are to have satisfaction and fulfillment. Now, in this knowing of the state of deep sleep, it is simply an expansion of consciousness from the little limited bubble of ego to the great ocean of God's presence. You all have read Master's poem on Samadhi. Not a mental chloroform, but an expansion of consciousness. From this little limited ego with all its trouble, tribulation, to the great peace of God's presence. The unity of his consciousness above duality. And in that peace, there can exist no trouble. Trouble comes in a duality of consciousness. Likes and dislikes. Happiness and pleasure. Happiness, pleasure, and disappointment. That's all it is. It's a dual consciousness. Rise above that. Supersede it. There can be only one consciousness the presence of God. And what a consciousness. What a joy. We are not supposed to be engrossed in this world existence of disappointment, in this wave consciousness. Master used to say, you do not belong here. Your home is with God. Well, I'm glad it's so, aren't you? And we do hope His grace will keep at us until we finally turn toward Him fully, unconditionally, and receive Him. So, death to some people is a great thing because it gives them a chance to escape from the tribulations of this existence. The soul is tired out, and it gives it a chance to rest. But in this worldly existence, it becomes tired. But in the soul consciousness, there is no tiredness. That's the delusion. And so people attached to this worldly consciousness, they must have a rest until, through God's grace, they break the attachment and the soul is free in Him. And in Him, there is no tribulation. Tribulation is in the dream consciousness. And why don't we wake up and realize that, meditate more and get out of it? As the Gita says, all men walk the earth wholly deluded in this dream consciousness. Then it says, get out of my delusion. Oh, Arjuna, get out of it. And so that's why we meditate. Let us meditate harder. Let us love God more, because He responds through affection and love. As the great saint said, feeling God's love means life without end. That's real life. Not feeling His love means death without end. Just that one thing, love. Love determines either a life of fulfillment, an eternal life. That one little word, love, means you can have that, or you can be in the existence known as death, which it is without God. And it'll go on until we wake up in God's love, until we break the cosmic dream by waking up in God. And so that last day is important, especially when it's the day when you wake up and understand delusion, and it stimulates you to do something about it, meditate deeply, and carry on as our Father would have us. That, to me, is the greatest last day. Of course, when everything is worked out and there's no more karma, and we are truly liberated, I realize that, of course, is the epitome of freedom. But until that time comes, let us wake up in God. Make every day the last day. Live that way, so that we can know we're never alone. Never alone. He's always with us. None escape. None escape. Makes no difference. Rich or poor, popular or unpopular, all pass through the same last day just before we pass into either oneness with God or oblivion. And so it is plain before us. Let us realize that it's up to us. We're made in God's image, as Master said. I was a sinner, but I didn't give up. So He became a saint. And we're all made in the same pattern of God. Let us do that. And speaking of Him reminds me of His words, which I'd like to read to you at this time. This first reference is rather from Sri Yukteswarji, but it's from Master's autobiography. The words are the same. Truth is the same. As the great Gandhi said, behind the Vedas, behind Christianity, behind Hinduism, behind Zoroastrianism, Mohammedanism is the same truth, and that truth is God's love. So Sri Yukteswarji says, the body is a treacherous friend. I'll say so. It gives us lots of trouble. We get it all fixed up one day, and the next day, how terrible you can feel. It's a treacherous thing. Sri Yukteswarji must have remembered that. The body is a treacherous friend. Give it its due and no more. Pain and pleasure are transitory. Endure all dualities with calmness, trying at the same time to remove yourself beyond their power. Imagination is the door through which disease as well as healing enters. Disbelieve in the reality of sickness even when you are ill. Well, that's a pretty hard job. You have a good stomach ache and you say it isn't there. Well, if you know God, you can get above it. But otherwise it's there and sometimes good and proper. So imagination is the door through which disease as well as healing enters. Disbelieve in the reality of sickness even when you are ill. An unrecognized visitor will flee. But it takes the grace of God to be able to not recognize the visitor sometimes. But it can be done. And so these are wonderful words from our Master's autobiography. Now going on just a little bit more. To be ready and prepared for the passing of this dream of God is our sensible duty, is it not? To be prepared. Just like when you wake up from your dream and you feel the dream receding and just fragments of it left, but aren't you conscious of your own consciousness as you're coming out? It's the same thing with a cosmic dream. In the last day, the dream will begin to fade. But if you know the consciousness into which you are going, then you have won. We must be prepared to do that. We must be prepared for the consciousness into which we are passing, that's all, and that consciousness is God's presence. Speaking about being prepared, a little story comes to my mind. This student, he failed in everything, flunked all his subjects. So he sent a telegram to his gentle mother, failed in everything. Prepare, Papa. In a couple of days he got a telegram back, Papa prepared. Prepare yourself. I thought that was a nice little story about being prepared. Prepare yourself for what's coming. Now let me see, where were we? Oh, yes. Now we can be prepared, we can be ready if we first so live that we are not attached to this consciousness. And the leaving of it will not make us too miserable. The leaving of it will not be a terrible thing. When you think of people who are attached to this world existence and that last day, when life begins to fade, the dream begins to fade, and all their desires are there, all their attachments are there, and they have no place to go. Think of how they feel. So first we must live unattached, so that there is no great hurt when the final passing comes. And secondly, we can be prepared by meditation every day, by knowing where we are going, by knowing our oneness with the Eternal Father. Meditation is the greatest thing. It's a necessity. We have to introspect. We have to look within ourselves all the time. Then we have to spiritually discipline ourselves. We have to do these things. And finally, when meditation